Want to know the worst suburbs in the Houston area? We are going to be talking about that today. I am obligated to say that I am a realtor here in the Houston area, and because of fair housing laws, I am prohibited to talk about things like safety, crime, or diversity in a particular area, which is a good thing, and there are many resources for you to research on your own about those particular topics. However, there are so many other factors to consider when choosing a suburb that may impact your investment long term. Number one is home appreciation. Now that we are seeing a shifting market and things are starting to stabilize a little bit, it's really interesting to see which suburbs continue to see a high appreciation over the last years and which one is starting to see a little bit of a decline or depreciation in value. There were only two suburbs that were in the negative, and just barely. They were Spring and Humble. Spring was down -1% and Humble was down -1.9%. Not a big deal and not a huge depreciation, and because it's so small, it could change by next month. But if you compare it to other suburbs like the Friendswood and the Woodlands that had an upward of 24 to 25% in appreciation, it's a big deal on when you choose where you're going to live. The suburbs that saw the most appreciation in the last year were Cypress, Tomball, Fulshire, the Woodlands, and Friendswood. The ones that saw the worst were Spring and Humble, obviously, and then there were those ones in the middle that saw, anywhere from 2 to 5%, which were Sugarland, Kingwood, Conroe, Pearland, Katy, and Clear Lake. Were all in the positive still. I just want to remind everyone that this particular report is a high-level overview of these suburbs. There are so many other contributing factors and attributes that go to if an area is going to appreciate or depreciate in value. So if you are interested in learning more about a particular suburb, I used Redfin Market Reports if you want to Google and look for yourself. Number two is suburban areas with high property taxes. The average property tax here in Houston is around 2.4%, which is already higher than the national average. However, if you are looking out in the suburbs, especially in new construction or larger master plan communities that are still under development, it is not uncommon for the property tax to be well over 3% for these particular areas. Let me break that down for you. If you purchased a $650,000 house in a tax rate that was 3.6%, you would be paying approximately $22,750 annually in property taxes, which is about an additional $1,895 added to your monthly mortgage payment. Of course, that is not applying any exemptions we have here in Texas, and another thing to keep in mind is that we have no state income taxes, which is why our property taxes tend to be a little higher than other states. This factor is an initial shock to many folks who move to the Houston area. This is neither a negative nor positive in terms of home value or if an area is good or bad. However, if you are looking to save as much as possible on property taxes, there are a few suburbs that you should avoid that have higher than average property taxes. So the suburbs with the highest property tax average was Humble, Pearland, and Cypress, ranging between 3.1 and 3.2%. Just remember that's an average, so some of these areas can go as high as 3.6%. The lowest ones were Friendswood, the Woodlands, Sugarland, Spring, and Conroe. All of these were ranging between 2.7 and 2.5%. I don't think it's a coincidence that the suburbs that are seeing the most appreciation are also areas that have lower than average property taxes, being Friendswood and the Woodlands. Again, just like the suburb appreciation, every community within these suburbs have different property tax rates, and it tends to be the newer the community or house, the higher the property tax generally is. Number three, flooding. Full disclaimer, I'm a little weird and I absolutely love the big storms here. We are a city that is prone to natural disasters. We have storms that can cause flooding as well as the occasional hurricane. Flooding is definitely a risk here in Houston, and I would be lying if I said there was a particular suburb that was exempt from this risk. Every neighborhood and suburb has some degree of flooding risk associated with it. In fact, in our last major hurricane, over 40% of the insurance claims that were made were outside of a floodplain area. This particular negative is also very individual to a community and a house. You could have one house in a neighborhood that is not in a floodplain and a house across the street that is in a floodplain due to the direction it's facing, the elevation it sits at, or how close it is to a waterway. And also, because the topography is constantly changing here in the Houston area, there could be a home that was not in a floodplain at one point that could become part of a floodplain. FEMA is required to update the floodplain maps every 5 years for all the communities. Generally, according to some news articles I read and watched and some statistics online, the suburbs in Kingwood near Lake Houston, as well as the Cypress North area, have experienced more flooding than average compared to some of the other suburbs. I'd say the worst suburb for you to live in is the one furthest from your work if you have to commute. Quite a few people relocating to the Houston area initially do not realize how large and vast the city is, spanning over 650 square miles. In fact, the city of Houston is larger than the entire states of Rhode Island, Delaware, Connecticut, New Jersey, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So, for example, living in the Woodlands and working in Sugar Land or the Medical District, that commute would take you well over an hour without traffic at any given day. One of your deciding factors on the best and worst suburbs should definitely be considering where you like to go, what kind of activities you enjoy doing, if you need to go to downtown often, if you need easy access to the airport, because all of these things will definitely help you narrow down particular suburbs you should look at and some that you should stay away from depending on commute time. Number 5 is affordability. Although overall you are not going to see a huge difference in the different pricing around the various suburbs, it does tend to be the more convenient the location, the more expensive the suburb is. So it really is going to come down to what's more important to you, convenience or affordability. So with that being said, I took the data of December of 2022 sales prices for the various suburbs and ended up with Humble, Conroe, and Spring being the most affordable suburbs with an average sales price somewhere in the mid 300s. And the most expensive suburbs that ended up in the high 400s were Friendswood, the Woodlands, and Fulshire. We should note that in the 4 most expensive suburbs, that is where the property taxes are the lowest, or those particular areas have award-winning master plan communities that are driving the prices and demand up for that area. The least expensive are the ones that tend to be a little bit further out of the metro city area, and a couple of these were showing a slight depreciation as of December of last year. I do want to note again that this is just a general overview of each suburban city. Pricing really will come down to the community, the age of the home, and the proximity to great schools, as well as location to the city. If you would like more in-depth knowledge about each one of these suburbs, make sure you check out my playlist about the Houston suburbs. And if you are looking to move to the area and would like assistance, please fill out the form below, and myself or a team member will contact you very shortly. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.